Is fish meat? It's an interesting topic. Many claim that it's not, while others insist that it is. There are vegetarians that do consume fish, claiming that it doesn't fit into the same category as pork or beef. But fish is an animal, and animal flesh are made out of protein, which aka is meat. So, is fish meat? Let's put an end to this debate once and for all. Before we get into the debate of whether fish is a meat or not, we need to define the word meat, because the whole debate rests squarely on your definition. Now, this is because different people use different definitions. It could be a general definition, a criteria for the food pyramid, a religious definition, or a scientific assessment. So, how does the dictionary define meat? Well, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, meat is defined as the flesh of an animal when it is used for food, nourishment, or substance. So, most dictionaries, to summarize, are going to define fish as meat since fish is an animal. What do religions think? Do religions think that fish is a meat? Although most religions do put fish and meat into different categories, there are restrictions on their consumption. Again, most religions place fish and meat into separate categories, limiting the use of both. Let's take a look at what some of the major religions' views are on this. Okay, let's start with Muslims. Muslims have a strict dietary rule about what is and is not permissible, halal. And they do put meat and fish into different categories. There are a strict set of rules about how meat should be handled in order to make it halal. But for fish, there are no specific butchering or preparation that's necessary. If a fish has scales, it is considered halal, and it requires no specific treatment to make it so. Most believe crustaceans are not permissible since they have an exoskeleton, but not having scales and scaleless things like shellfish and octopuses are also forbidden. Well, let's see what Judaism has to say about this matter. Judaism, with its extremely complex set of dietary guidelines, kashrut, does differentiate between meat and fish. And this differentiation can be seen in its prohibition against eating fish and meat together. A permitted fish, yet again, just like Muslims, must have both fins and scales. So, yet again, no shellfish are permitted or allowed. Hindu. What do Hindus have to say about this matter? India is the country that consumes the least amount of flesh per capita, but Hindu dietary restrictions do vary amongst the groups. Although the rules against eating beef is universal, the different groups do have different rules when it comes to fish. Some eat fish, but since the most revered Hindu text strongly recommends against it, ahimsa, which is something I do follow, it is essentially non-violence against all life forms. So they basically follow a strict lacto-vegetarian diet, which consists of no meat, poultry, or fish. Now, Christians. Few Christian denominations prohibit the consumption of fish or meat. Actually, the Bible makes little differentiation between the two and says that as long as a fish has fins and scales, it's okay to eat. Also, some teachings do suggest that since Jesus died on a Friday, people should fast that day. But some people have took that up to mean that they shouldn't eat meat from any warm-blooded animals on a Friday. This is why some people have opted out to eat fish instead. To summarize, most religions do have different rules for meat and fish, but they all put limitations on both. So in a sense, religion traditionally views meat and fish as food to be careful about. So for a long time, we followed the USDA's food pyramid. I knew I grew up following this. But how do they classify meat and fish? In order to have a better understanding of how the views on nutrition has changed throughout the years, we need to take a closer look at the evolution of the food pyramid. In the 1940s, the US had a food wheel instead of a pyramid, and on it, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, dried beans, peas, nuts, and even peanut butter were all listed as alternative sources of protein. When the food pyramid was first established in Sweden in 1947, meat, poultry, fish, beans, and eggs were all viewed as similar sources of protein. Now, moving on to 1992, the US first established its own updated interpretation of the food pyramid. And on it, they listed meat, poultry, fish, dry beans, eggs, and nuts as sources of protein. In 2005, however, a new updated and simplified model listed meat and beans as the only choices, although the pictograph also showed illustrations of other sources of protein. Now, in 2011, the pyramid was replaced with what we currently have today, which is My Plate. And it's even simpler. It recommends a portion of protein, but it doesn't have any specific sources of protein. So to summarize, since the government started making nutritional recommendations, meat and fish have been in the same category. Since then, the trend has been to view not only meat and fish as the same, but to categorize all protein sources, both animal and vegetable, as equal and interchangeable. So let's see what nature and science have to say about this. Fish swim, they eat, they digest, they see, they breathe, they bleed. They're sentient beings. Fish are animals, just like cows, cats, or humans. Your worldwide view and desires will most likely shape your beliefs on how fish is classified and defined. But that doesn't change the fact that fish are animals, and they're made of mostly meat. Meat is mostly an animal's muscle tissue. Most meat is about 75% water with 20% protein and about 5% fats. Look, it's pretty obvious that fish meat derives from fish, which is a living, breathing animal. In fact, meat makes up majority of the creature. So when you're eating fish, you're mostly completely consuming the whole animal. Fish meat is called fish, just like how chicken is called chicken. Some think that fish are not red-blooded animals, but they're wrong. Fish have red blood cells. Some put fish into a different category since they are cold-blooded, but alligators, snakes, and frogs are also cold-blooded, and they're also all made up of meat. A true vegetarian won't eat animals. If you go into a vegetarian restaurant or purchase a vegetarian product, you would not expect to find meat in there, and this includes fish. So for classification's sake, if you find yourself consuming fish and you're claiming to be a vegetarian, you're actually not. You're a pescatarian. So in conclusion, fish is a meat. Some might say that this conclusion is too simplistic, but it really isn't. I mean, the only complicated thing about this is trying to classify a meat as something other than meat. And the only reason that this is even a debate is that some people don't like the idea of them eating meat. So if you're consuming fish, you're eating meat. And you already know how this YouTube jazz works. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Thanks, guys.